We often take jobs out of necessity. We weigh the risks, the hours, the pay, and sometimes desperation tips the scales. We tell ourselves it's just temporary, just a way to get by. But some places hold more than just dust and memories. They hold on to the echoes of the past. Echoes that can bleed into the present, especially during the suffocating silence of the graveyard shift. Tonight's story comes from a man we'll call Liam, who took a job he desperately needed, only to find himself locked in a terrifying struggle within the decaying heart of an abandoned textile mill, a place called Blackwood Mill. What he experienced there serves as a chilling reminder that some doors are best left unopened, and some silences are filled with horrors unseen. It started, like most bad decisions, with money, or rather, the lack of it. My younger sister, Chloe, needed another round of treatments, expensive ones, and my day job just wasn't cutting it anymore. I was scrolling through online job boards late one night, the blue light stinging my tired eyes, when I saw it. Night security position available. Blackwood Mill site. Competitive pay. Immediate start. Blackwood Mill. Even the name sounded like something scraped from the bottom of a forgotten well. Everyone in town knew the place, or at least knew of it. It sat on the outskirts, a colossal brick carcass slowly being devoured by ivy and neglect. It had been the town's lifeblood for generations, churning out textiles day and night, until cheaper labor overseas choked it dead some 30 years ago. Since then, it just sat there. Rumors clung to it, like the damp moss on its walls. Accidents, unfair labor practices, even whispers of workers who vanished without a trace back in its heyday. Teenagers dared each other to sneak in, but mostly it was just a hulking, silent monument to a dead industry. Competitive pay, though immediate start. I ignored the shiver that traced its way down my spine and fired off my resume. To my surprise, I got a call the very next morning. The voice on the other end, belonging to a Mr. Henderson, was brisk and impersonal. The interview was basically him confirming I had a pulse and could stay awake. The site's scheduled for demolition next year, he'd explained gruffly over the phone. Insurance requires round-the-clock security until the permit's clear. Vandals, copper thieves, adventurous kids. You know the drill. Just patrol the perimeter. Check the main access points. Make sure no one's getting in or starting fires. There's a small security office near the main gate with heating, a kettle, and a monitor linked to a few outdated cameras. Mostly, you just need to be a presence. It sounded easy enough. boring even. Just sit in a warm booth, drink bad coffee, and walk around a creepy old building a few times a night. The pay was almost double what seemed reasonable, a fact I attributed to the undesirable hours and location. Chloe needed the money. I took the job. My first shift began the following Monday. Henderson met me at the rusting main gate, handed me a heavy ring of keys that looked older than I was, a flickering flashlight that had definitely seen better days, and a laminated map of the grounds. The map showed the main mill building, a sprawling multi-story behemoth, plus several outbuildings, warehouses, a dye house, an old administrative block. My patrol route basically circled the main building and required checking the locks on the primary entrances of the outbuildings. "Stick to the route," Henderson warned, his eyes barely meeting mine. "Most interior doors are locked or blocked anyway. No need to go exploring. Power's only on in the security office and for some exterior safety lights. Don't touch anything you don't need to. Just the physical. Make your rounds. Log anything unusual. Got it?" I nodded, the sheer scale of the place starting to sink in as dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. The mill loomed over me, its hundreds of darkened windows like vacant eyes staring down. An unsettling silence pressed in, broken only by the wind whistling through broken panes and the distant hum of the highway. The security office was small and smelled faintly of stale coffee and dust. The cameras showed grainy, static-laced images of the main gate, the loading dock area, and a stretch of the perimeter fence. Pretty useless, honestly. The first few hours passed in a haze of lukewarm coffee and the monotonous ticking of the cheap plastic clock on the wall. Around midnight, it was time for my first patrol. Stepping out of the relative warmth of the office was like stepping into another world. The temperature had dropped, and a thin mist was beginning to curl up from the damp ground, clinging to the base of the mill walls. The few functioning safety lights cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe in my peripheral vision. My flashlight beam cut a weak path through the gloom. The air was heavy with a smell of decay, wet brick, and something else. A faint, metallic tang, like old oil or rust. Every sound was amplified. The crunch of my boots on the gravel path, the scuttling of some unseen creature in the overgrown weeds, the groan of stressed metal somewhere high above. I checked the main entrance. Huge, bolted wooden doors that hadn't opened in decades. Secure. I moved along the towering brick facade, my light scanning the rows upon rows of black windows. It felt like the building itself was watching me, holding its breath. I kept telling myself It was just my imagination, the isolation, the stories I'd heard. The first real sense of unease hit me near the old dye house. It was set back slightly from the main building, connected by a covered walkway choked with weeds. The air here felt colder, heavier. As I reached to check the padlock on its warped wooden door, I heard it. A distinct, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. I froze, straining my ears. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, coming from inside the dye house. Thump, 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 like something heavy and soft being repeatedly dropped onto a wooden floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. Vandals? Squatters? "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin and shaky in the vast silence. "Security, is anyone in there?" The thumping stopped instantly. Absolute silence descended again, so thick it felt like pressure against my eardrums. I shone my light through a grimy window, but could only make out vague shapes and deep shadows within. After a minute that stretched into an eternity, I convinced myself it must have been loose piping, or maybe an animal trapped inside. Reluctantly, I marked it in my log. Unusual noise from dye house, possible animal structural, and continued my patrol. Though my steps were quicker now, my head constantly swiveling. The rest of the night passed without incident, but the unease lingered. Back in the office, the grainy camera feeds seemed more menacing, the shadows deeper. I jumped at every creak and groan of the old building settling. The second night was worse. The mist was thicker, swallowing the safety lights until they were just indistinct halos in the gloom. As I approached the loading dock area on the far side of the mill, I heard another sound. This time, it wasn't a thump, but a faint, high-pitched scraping, like metal dragging lightly across concrete. It seemed to come from the upper floors of the main building, somewhere above the docks. Again, I called out. Again, instant silence. I scanned the windows above with my flashlight beam, but saw nothing but black emptiness. My skin crawled. This wasn't settling noises. This felt deliberate. I added it to the log. Scraping noise heard from upper floors, vicinity loading dock. Henderson hadn't mentioned anything about animals getting inside the main building. He'd said it was secure. By the third night, I was dreading the patrols. I started taking longer in the office, delaying the inevitable walk into the oppressive darkness. I topped up my coffee, fiddled with the radio, checked the useless cameras over and over. Around 1 a.m., I forced myself out. The air was still and cold. As I rounded the corner towards the administrative block, my flashlight beam caught something glinting on the gravel path ahead. I approached cautiously. It was a small, tarnished silver locket, shaped like a heart. It looked old, very old. I picked it up, It was cold to the touch, strangely heavy. There was no chain. It hadn't been there on my previous patrols. I was sure of it. Where had it come from? Dropped by a previous explorer? Or something else? A wave of dizziness washed over me as I held it. A faint, almost imperceptible scent, like dried flowers and dust, seemed to emanate from the metal. I quickly pocketed it, a cold dread coiling in my stomach. This felt wrong. Too specific. Too personal. Later that night, near the main entrance again, I heard it, whispering. Indistinct, sibilant whispers, like snatches of conversation, carried on the wind. Except there was no wind. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, dancing just at the edge of my hearing. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting wildly through the mist. But there was nothing, just the silent, hulking mill and the pressing darkness. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. The whispering stopped, but this time I felt it. A distinct drop in temperature, sharp and sudden, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Goosebumps erupted on my arms. I could almost see my breath fogging in the beam of my flashlight. It lasted only a few seconds. Then the air returned to its normal chill. I practically ran back to the security office, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. I locked the door behind me, something I hadn't bothered to do before. I sat there, shaking, staring at the monitor, trying to rationalize. Old building, drafts, wind tunnels, my imagination running wild due to lack of sleep and the creepy environment. But the locket felt heavy in my pocket. The whispers had sounded too real. The cold spot. I decided to call Henderson. It was nearly 3 a.m., but the log entries were piling up. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep and irritation. "Henderson. Mr. Henderson, it's Liam, the night guard at the mill." "What is it? Everything all right?" "Sir, I've been hearing things. Noises, whispering, and I found this old locket on the path." There was a pause. Then Henderson sighed, a long, weary sound. "Look, Liam, it's an old place. It makes noises. Wind whistles through cracks. Pipes bang. Rats scurry around. As for the locket, probably dropped by some kid weeks ago. Don't let the place get to you. Just finish your shift. Log anything concrete, like actual broken windows or cut fences. Otherwise, try to ignore the bumps in the night. That's what they pay you the big bucks for." He hung up before I could protest further. Ignore it. Right, easy for him to say from his warm bed miles away. I felt a surge of anger, quickly followed by a deeper wave of fear. I was alone out here, completely alone, and whatever was making those noises knew it. The 4th night, I almost didn't go in. Chloe's face swam in my mind, the hopeful look in her eyes when I told her I got the job, the relief knowing another treatment was covered. I couldn't quit. I wouldn't. I just had to be tougher, more rational. I armed myself with an extra flashlight, checked the batteries obsessively, and even brought a heavy tire iron from my car trunk, tucking it into my belt. It felt ridiculous, but also necessary. The first patrol was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. The silence felt charged, expectant. I checked the dye house. Silence. The loading dock. Silence. The administrative block. Silence. Maybe Henderson was right. Maybe it was just nerves. I was nearing the end of my route, back near the main entrance, walking along the massive northern wall. This section was particularly dark, shaded by overgrown trees. My flashlight beam played over the bricks, the boarded-up windows. Then, a loud bang echoed from inside the main mill, directly opposite where I stood. It wasn't a thump or a scrape. It was sharp, metallic, violent, like a heavy steel door being slammed shut with incredible force. I jumped back, heart leaping into my throat. My flashlight beam shot towards the sound's origin, a section of the wall maybe 20 feet up. There were no doors there, just solid brick and boarded windows. And then I saw it. One of the boarded-up windows on the second floor wasn't fully boarded. A couple of planks had rotted or been pulled away, leaving a gap. And in that gap, silhouetted against the deeper blackness within, I saw a figure. It was tall, unnaturally thin, and hunched. I couldn't make out features, just a stark, black shape against the dark interior. It wasn't moving, just standing there in the broken window frame, seemingly looking right down at me. Adrenaline flooded my system, cold and electric. Every rational thought evaporated. That wasn't a trick of the light. That wasn't my imagination. That was something. Something inside the mill, watching me. I stumbled backwards, my eyes locked on the figure. It didn't move, didn't react, just stood there, a silent sentinel in the decaying window. I fumbled for the tire iron, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip it. "Get away," I yelled, my voice cracking. "I see you. Stay away." The figure remained motionless for another second. Then it slowly, deliberately retreated back into the blackness of the mill interior, vanishing from the gap. I didn't wait. I turned and ran faster than I thought possible, back towards the feeble light of the security office. I didn't stop until I slammed the door shut, jammed a chair under the knob, and collapsed into the worn office chair, gasping for breath. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My mind raced. It saw me. It knew I saw it. What was it? A squatter? A ghost? Whatever it was, it wasn't friendly. The slam, the silent observation. It felt like a warning. Or worse, an invitation. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the office, jumping at every sound, staring intently at the static-filled monitors, the tire iron clutched in my white-knuckled fist. Sleep was impossible. The image of that gaunt figure in the window was burned into my retinas. I should have quit then. Any sane person would have walked away and never looked back. But Chloe? The treatments. I convinced myself it was a one-off. Maybe it was just a very stealthy trespasser trying to scare me off. I'd be more vigilant. I wouldn't let it get to me. That resolve lasted until my 5th night. The shift started with an oppressive feeling, heavier than before. The air itself felt thick, charged with static electricity, even inside the office. The silence seemed unnatural, like the world outside was holding its breath. I delayed my first patrol until almost 2 a.m. Gripping the tire iron tightly, I stepped out. The mist was gone, replaced by a clear, cold night sky. The stars seemed distant and uncaring. As I approached the main mill building, the familiar sounds began, but this time they were bolder, closer. A dragging sound from just around the corner. A metallic clang from the roof above. Whispers that seemed to slither through the air right beside my ear. I ignored them, forcing myself to keep walking, checking the locks, trying to project an air of authority I didn't feel. It happened when I reached the loading dock area again. The large, corrugated steel doors of the loading bay were meant to be securely shut. Tonight, one of them was slightly ajar, maybe 6 inches open, revealing a sliver of pitch-black darkness within. I froze. I knew I had checked it earlier. It had been closed. Had the wind? No, there was no wind. My blood ran cold. Had it opened it? Was it inviting me in, or daring me? Against my better judgment, driven by a morbid mix of fear and a desperate need to understand, I approached the gap. I shone my flashlight into the opening. The beam pierced the darkness, revealing the cavernous space of the loading bay. Pallets stacked high with rotting burlap sacks. Rusted chains hanging from the ceiling like metallic vines. Dust motes dancing in the beam. And the smell, oh God, the smell hit me then. Not just damp and decay. It was thick, coppery, and sickeningly sweet. The smell of old blood. Suddenly, from the depths of the loading bay, came a sound that turned my blood to ice. A low, guttural chuckle. It wasn't human. It was wet, rasping, filled with ancient malice. That broke me. Rationality shattered. Survival instinct screamed. I didn't hesitate. I turned to run, back towards the office, towards the gate, towards anywhere but here. But as I turned, something slammed into my back with tremendous force, sending me sprawling onto the gravel. The tire iron, flying from my grasp. Pain exploded in my shoulder. I landed hard, the air knocked from my lungs. Scrabbling, gasping, I twisted around, trying to see what hit me. There was nothing there, just the oppressive darkness and the slightly open loading bay door. But I felt it, a heavy, unseen weight pressing down on me, cold and suffocating. Panic gave me a surge of strength. I kicked and thrashed, rolling onto my stomach, pushing myself up. I could hear the whispering again, louder now, swirling around me, indistinct words filled with menace, and the chuckle. It echoed softly from the loading bay. I scrambled for the tire iron, my fingers closing around the cold metal, just as something grabbed my ankle. It wasn't a hand. It felt like icy, skeletal fingers, impossibly strong, digging into my flesh through my jeans. I yelled, kicking out wildly, connecting with nothing solid, yet the grip held firm, trying to drag me backwards, towards the open loading bay door, towards the source of that horrifying chuckle and the smell of old blood. Desperation fueled me. I swung the tire iron blindly behind me, down towards my ankle. I heard a sickening, wet crunch, and the grip instantly released. I didn't dare look back. I surged to my feet and ran. I didn't care about the patrol route, the logbook, the job. I ran straight for the main gate, fumbling with the heavy keys, my hands slick with sweat and shaking violently. The gate lock felt impossibly stiff. Behind me, I heard a heavy, dragging footstep on the gravel, gaining speed. The whispering intensified, swirling into a cacophony of malice. The lock finally clicked open. I wrenched the gate wide enough to slip through, slammed it shut behind me, not bothering to lock it. I sprinted to my car, parked just outside the perimeter, keys already in hand. I didn't look back at the mill, at the looming silhouette against the night sky, at the darkness pooling around its base. I drove away, tires squealing, not slowing down until the dreaded shape of Blackwood Mill was miles behind me. I never went back. I called Henderson the next day, told him I quit, effective immediately. I didn't give him the details. I couldn't. He just grunted and said he'd mail my final check. It's been months now. I found another job, thankfully. Chloe is doing better. The treatments are helping. But I still have nightmares. Nightmares filled with echoing whispers. The smell of decay and old blood, and the sight of that impossibly thin figure, silhouetted in a broken window. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I think I hear faint scraping sounds, or a low, wet chuckle, just at the edge of hearing. And my ankle, where that thing grabbed me, there are marks there. Faint, pale lines just beneath the skin, cold to the touch, arranged like grasping fingers. A permanent reminder of the graveyard shift at Blackwood Mill. A reminder that some places are steeped in darkness. And sometimes, when you stare into the abyss, something stares back. Liam never found out what haunted Blackwood Mill. Was it the spirits of overworked laborers? The echo of a specific tragedy or something older, drawn to the decay and isolation. He didn't care to know. He escaped with his life, but the chilling grip of that place, both physical and psychological, remains. It serves as a terrifying testament to the hidden horrors that can lurk behind dilapidated walls, waiting for the silence of the night shift to awaken.